the United Nations not long ago, America had a chance to strike a peaceful blow for the safety of the free world. But in the conference room, our opponents let us know that they had the jump on us. The American delegates were forestalled, embarrassed, and quite helpless. Because our enemies knew certain things we alone were supposed to know. No wars started as a result of this, but much was lost. Lost because somewhere in our foreign service there had been a leak. Someone had committed a kind of low treason. Sold out by nothing more romantic than the thoughtlessness of people who might easily have been you. It all started when 2 reports arrived at one of our government offices overseas. Together with all official mail, these 2 reports had been routed through the normal channels of the government's courier service. But because of the kind of information contained in the 2 documents, both had been classified confidential. Bearing that classification, they were given very special handling. When they traveled between foreign service installations, they were carried under seal by American couriers who never let them out of their sight. At every point in their routing, careful track was kept of them. And at all stages of their existence, these documents were subject to security procedures and security regulations. Security is also the clearance of employees, the maintenance and supervision of special storage equipment, the disposal of classified waste, the segregation of sensitive areas. It's the guard force. This thorough, involved coverage is maintained to ensure that classified material will reach its destination safely and uncompromised. Even when the 2 reports traveled between offices in the same building, they were carried by a qualified messenger who signed for them and got a signed receipt when they were delivered. Call this man Thompson. He was neither a fool nor a traitor, but a responsible official. His secretary, Miss Williams, was a conscientious and efficient young woman. Yet while these 2 people were in possession of the confidential reports, they committed a series of blunders that made the previous safeguarding of the documents a waste of time, and their classification almost meaningless. All the effort and expense of their protection nullified in a day by the human element, by people just like you. Bear in mind that this is not what might happen, but what has happened far too often.
Mr. Thompson, I'll be back in a minute.
All right.
Miss Starlin's office, please. No, this can't wait. I'll go down and see him. Thank you.
It was late in the afternoon, and Thompson had still a great deal of work to do. He went only a few steps down the hall to save a moment, but he left his office unattended. This man was not a spy. He was a legitimate visitor, there on honest business. But he was human, and he was curious. Thompson had taken the first report with him, but the second lay on Miss Williams's desk, and the visitor had time to read part of it before she came back. He made an appointment with her to see Thompson later in the week. He'd done nothing wrong, but he'd read what only qualified people were meant to read. Some of the information in that report is no longer confidential.
Hello? Oh, I'm sorry Mr. Thompson isn't in. Yes? Oh, here he is now. Geneva calling, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Just a moment, please.
Hello? Hello? Jack? Well, how are you? Well, listen, Jack, I just got a report from Willard's office. No, I haven't got time to send you a memo on it, so I'd better tell you about it instead. Oh, no, I'm not going to read it. After all, it's confidential. But the substance of what it says is that...
Thompson was in a hurry, but he knew better than to do this. For almost every phone call you make, important or not, is listened to by people employed to do exactly that. Cryptographic facilities should have been used instead of the telephone.
All right. Goodbye.
At this point, several parts of both reports were known by unauthorized persons. Neither report was now much more confidential than your morning newspaper. It happened that only one item in each report was of particular significance. Put together, though, they told a story that was of considerable importance, and Thompson immediately saw this. His ability to see such things was one reason he held the position he did.
Miss Williams, make me up an extract of these reports. They are marked as I want them. Make a dozen copies. I've got to have them for the conference tomorrow.
Surely, then I'll get someone to help me. Nicole, could you help me with this typing job? Mr. Thompson has to take it with him when he leaves tonight, and I simply haven't time to do it.
Sure, I'd be glad to. How many copies do you want?
12. He needs an extract of the marked paragraphs of these two originals.
All right. Did you have a nice time at that place you went the other night?
The place was all right, but that man doing the samba with him was like finding yourself caught in a track meet. I didn't even see the show. When we went dancing, he was chasing me around the table. I haven't spent such a rugged evening since the war.
That's what's nice about being married. You don't have to resist.
That's a thought.
It was all right for Miss Williams to ask for help in the interests of speed. But her friend, though she may have been investigated, was not an American. It wasn't fair to her to have been given this information. And of course, it was a serious breach of security. Too many people, like Miss Williams, have days like this. Days when there just doesn't seem time enough to be careful.
Hello.
Oh, there you are.
I hope they're going to be all right.
Oh, I'm sure they will be. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
But there was time for Miss Williams to make a few more mistakes. Naturally, the foreign typist hadn't put a classification on the extract from the two reports. But it was just as confidential as they were. Miss Williams allowed it to remain unclassified. And the moment she did so, it ceased to be covered by security regulations and would no longer be protected. The last thing Miss Williams did that day was also a perfectly human oversight.
Miss Williams,
Yes?
will you stop by the transportation section and check on my tickets?
Yes, I will.
She didn't sufficiently turn the dial when she locked the safe. It could have been opened by anyone, simply by turning the dial back to 0 and opening the drawers. Even by working overtime, Thompson couldn't finish all he had to do to prepare for his conference in the morning. Matters were further complicated by his having a dinner engagement before his train left, where he was to meet some of his colleagues, whom he had to consult before the conference next day. Too rushed to set his desk in order, he put most of what was on it into the drawer. But that drawer was not meant to replace a safe file. He had decided to take his remaining work with him. Though he knew this was not the right thing to do, he felt sure he was capable of taking care of the classified papers he removed. But while he could be sure that what he carried in his head was safe, written information is never so secure. He turned his keys into the guard, who kept no count of desk keys and noticed nothing wrong. Then, completely unaware that anything was not as it should be, he signed out of the building and went off to dinner, the briefcase safely in his hand. An hour or two later, over coffee with his friends, he had several guarded things to say about the 2 pieces of information he'd received that day. His listeners were all trusted, reliable men, just as he was, except for the waiter, of course. At about this hour, the security guard was making his routine rounds. In the course of his tour, he visited Thompson's office and made a thorough inspection of it. When he found the safe file improperly closed, he took some random contents from it as specimen. Then he closed it correctly. He tried the drawers of Thompson's desk and found them all locked. Then, as anyone could have done, he came upon the desk key Thompson had overlooked. In the drawer, he discovered all that Thompson had put there. He removed everything that was classified and made a note of the violation. There was nothing the matter with Miss Williams's desk so far as he could see. And since the carbons of the extract, although containing confidential information, were not so marked, he left them in the wastebasket. Thompson, at this point, was on his way to his train. The briefcase was not left behind in the taxi, but it might have been. Thompson might have let the porter handle it, but he didn't. It is because of what might and what does happen that the kind of papers he was carrying must travel in the diplomatic pouch or by special messenger. But Thompson wanted to work on them in the privacy of his compartment. He felt that though he was breaking the rules, it was for a good reason. Back in the office, the cleaning women were arriving for work. These women have been investigated and found trustworthy, but they're not Americans. They are one reason why the guard made his inspection of the room, for they have all the curiosity you might expect. That was just a violation slip the guard had left. It was of no particular interest to an outsider. But other things in the room were. The carbons of the extract were still lying in Miss Williams's wastebasket. And these ladies, working for Americans as they do, have acquired a remarkable command of English.
Irène, viens voir. Qu'est-ce que c'est? I love you, darling. You are so beautiful.
Vous en recevez souvent des lettres d'amour comme ça, vous?
Plus maintenant, je suis bien trop vieille.
Oh, faut toujours espérer.
Vous croyez?
Mais oui.
On the train, Thompson finally ended his long day's work a few hours later with one last blunder. It is because of the frequency of errors like this, errors committed by intelligent, competent people, that unauthorized hand carrying of classified documents is prohibited. When Miss Williams arrived at the office the next morning, she expected only to be a bit less busy with Thompson out of town. She was rather disturbed to find the slips the guard had left to notify her of the violations he had found. But the best-run offices, unfortunately, grow lax from time to time because people grow lax. Security is largely a question of common sense detail. It is altogether too frequent an occurrence to have many violations appearing in one office in a single day. Miss Williams was no better and no worse than any good secretary. She had simply overlooked a few very important details. And so that day, before she could start her work, it was necessary for her to go to the security office to recover the papers the guard had taken. It was a new experience for her. For Thompson's office had had a good record until then. The security officer had some questions to ask her and a few comments to make. Then he had her sign the violation slips before he returned the missing papers. Miss Williams went back to spend a busy morning setting her office to rights. At the conference, Thompson made a very good impression. His extract from the two reports received close attention, for the story it told, in the light of the international situation then existing, meant a good deal. The matter was referred to higher authority, for it could have been of considerable service to the United States in dealings with certain other nations. That evening, Thompson, having locked his briefcase safely in his hotel room, went out to see the sights before catching the train home.
Hello, Miss Williams.
Welcome back. Did you have a pleasant trip?
Yes. Pretty successful, all told. Anything happen while I was gone?
Oh, nothing in particular. Except that we got a couple of violation slips.
Security violations? What in the world for?
Well, the file safe wasn't locked, and you left some confidential things on your desk.
I couldn't have.
But you did.
Well, I suppose these security boys know what they're doing. But it seems to me they're trying to make mountains out of molehills. Well, I guess we'd better get things straightened up around here.
They straightened out their office, reclassifying what had been unintentionally declassified, filing papers where they belonged, attending to all the details which make up day-to-day security. The office was once again a secure one, and they agreed to take every possible precaution to keep it that way. But it was far too late. The significance Thompson had found in the two pieces of information others could find, and they did. 3 days later, the world and Thompson and Miss Williams learned that the United States had been sold out. No one would ever know exactly what had done the damage. It might have been what was overheard. It might have been what was seen, or what had fallen into unauthorized hands. A thorough investigation, however, revealed that the most likely source of the leak was Thompson's office. Thompson and Miss Williams were shocked to learn the consequences of their carelessness. But it was too late. The ambassador called them both in and spoke to them about the incident. As he pointed out, security had not failed. What it could prevent, it had prevented. But its thoroughness had not been enough, because Miss Williams and Thompson failed. Their low treason could be yours. Make the simple, vital rules that constitute security a part of your working life, because the safeguarding of all United States property, and to a great degree the position of the nation itself in world affairs, rests basically with you, the Foreign Service employee.